Ani, Bojo, Wache, Scano, Tant Si. Good afternoon, everybody. Optigises Quay Indigenous. New Credit Dunjaba, Makwadodam, Mississauga, Quay Endau. Today we're going to explore an Indigenous perspective on the importance of the Credit River with Carolyn King. But first I would like to introduce the Rotary Club President, Hashim Takvi, who will bring greetings.
My name is Hashim Takvi, and I'm the current president of the Rotary Club of Mississauga. In the heart of Mississauga, a vibrant community hub thrives under the banner of service, fellowship, and philanthropy. The Rotary Club of Mississauga stands as a beacon of hope, uniting individuals from diverse backgrounds under a common mission to make a positive impact locally and globally. Founded on the principles of Rotary International, the Mississauga chapter embodies the organization's commitment to service above self. With a rich history spanning decades, the club has continuously evolved to meet the changing needs of its community, leaving an indelible mark on countless lives along the way. At the core of the Rotary Club of Mississauga's ethos is a dedication to community service. Through a myriad of projects and initiatives, members channel their passion and resources towards addressing pressing issues and effecting meaningful change. From supporting local schools and charities to spearheading environmental conservation efforts, the club's impact reverberates far and wide. Education lies at the forefront of the Rotary Club of Mississauga endeavors. Recognizing the transformative power of learning, the club actively engaged with schools and education institutions to provide resources and opportunities for students to thrive. Where through scholarships programs, literacy initiatives, or mentorship schemes, Rotary members champion the next generation, empowering them to realize their full potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Hashim. Carolyn has been engaged by government, colleges and universities, businesses and community organizations to do cross-cultural training sessions and presentations to help people develop a better understanding of Indigenous and First Nations people in Canada. A recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal in recognition of her support for First Nations history and advancement of the Indigenous people. She has been a driving force in the identification of the significance of current and historic sites within traditional territory lands and the preservations of First Nations traditions. Carolyn King received the Order of Canada, one of our country's highest honors in 2020, presented by the Governor General. The order honors people whose service shapes our society, whose innovations ignite our imaginations, and whose compassion unites our communities. Carolyn's appointment was for her expertise in community development, her advocacy of Indigenous-led initiatives, and her efforts to improve Canada's understanding of First Nations. And Carolyn is also the founder of the Moccasin Identifier. Everybody please help me and bring Carolyn in. Miigwech.
Okay, Ani. So you heard my introduction, and you did the land acknowledgement in the presentation there, and I want to, as a member of the First Nation, as a First Nation member who resides on the reserve, and like Faith, we're like sort of the official First Nations people, and so we could just actually say, welcome to our land and our territories. That's so. I'm going to thank you for the opportunity to present, and I can acknowledge Hashim and the Rotary Club and some previous work that we are talking with Rotary Club, and they have proposed, or when I do the Moccasin Identifier, they're waiting to be a big partner with us in getting the Moccasin Identifier all over the place. So you won't hear too much about that because I'm going to talk mostly about the river. And that's so I have a number of slides that are being put together. I put together with pictures, and that the team here, Anthony, and is going to help move the slides forward. So I'm coming to you from what you see behind me. I'm at the First Nation in Hagersville. So we're about an hour away from Mississauga, the city of Mississauga, and that's and we're called the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and we still call the core area New Credit, even though they've taken the new out of our official name. So if you didn't know that, we had Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation, because New Credit was our new name when we moved here in 1847. So we, after many confusing times, we put the new in, and I was part of that. And then we had to take it out because of land claim issues, and that we changed our name. So we call the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation our Indian Affairs name for, for legal purposes. So that's why we get this. People wonder why we took out new. And most of the people may be on the line. And thank you for all those who have joined to hear the story about, my perspective on the importance of the Credit River. So you heard from Faith that I've been involved in doing learning and teachings and out there advocating and trying to get people to understand about the river. And so you say, why is it important to us? And first of all, like I said, you heard about it's our traditional territory, and that our people lived there for centuries, and mostly along the river, along all the rivers actually, but the Credit took our name. And that it is in colonialism, the taking of the land and the settling of people who come from other places to live here. We signed agreements, surrenders, made treaty agreements with the government of the days, mostly Britain, to and that's number 22, number 23, the Atchison Treaty that covers a bigger area, and included in there is where we give up the Credit River story is in those treaties too. And that it carries our name in relation to our treaty activity, trading activity with the French and the British. And that the story goes in the historical record that our ancestors, the Mississaugas, that's our name, the Mississaugas, and means body of water with many mouths. And the saga in Ojibwe is water. And that we were living, our village site is there, and I got a couple pictures, a picture about where our village was. And that we traded for pelts in the 1700s there when the fur trade was active, traded with the French and the British. And sometimes there wasn't enough pelts to meet the trade. And we traded for pots and pans and goods and blankets and different things like that back in the day. And that they put it on credit, or on tick, as we would often say. And in the next trip visit by the French or the British fur traders, in order to be in good favor with them, they paid up, someone in the community paid up. And so they were always had a good credit rating, you might say, as we would look at it today. And that we became known as the good credit Indians. And I use the word Indian because that's the words that were used back then. And that it evolved, that the river credit Indians, then it evolved to be the Credit River. And then our name, as we know today, Mississaugas of the Credit. And that the river's indigenous name is Missinini, meaning trusting river or quiet river. And that we fish there a lot as part of our lifestyle. And so that's how us Mississaugas of the Credit were identified by the governments of the day as different from the other Mississauga nations, because there's 6 of us that carry the name Mississauga. And that, so we're the ones that came down from the north into around the Great Lake, around Lake Simcoe, down into, one group came to Toronto area, where, you know, the Toronto and Port Credit are, and others went up right Tyendinaga, Belleville, Prince Edward County area. So that's how we, you know, it becomes the Credit River. And so I find that when I'm out there talking, especially if I'm in Mississauga, so many people don't know how Mississauga got its name, nor do they know why the Credit River is named that. So hopefully that helps identify why the name is that, and that like I said, and I've been around a long time doing all this work for 40 years or plus, and that I'll even longer than that, because I was at the official opening stuff of the when the city took on the name Mississauga, and when they were just starting up and changing from the Port Credit into becoming the city of Mississauga. And it's my understanding that Port Credit is a very strong and loyal community, and they refuse to give up their name, and they're still called Port Credit. And so the all the work that all the activity that has built the sort of the rest of the area, you know, started at the waterfront and along the river there. So it's that's our you know, name linkage right into the city and the river. So when we talk about the importance of the Credit River, I put together a bunch of pictures that I want to talk to that helps outline that. So Anthony, we can go to the next one. This here, when you talked about the lands. So for people who may not understand, when we use the word traditional territory or treaty, the colored areas, and this is all off of the First Nation website, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. They have an informative website. Those are the treaties that we signed, or cessations giving up of land according to the new, you know, basically British government process. And that the other identifier you see on here is the black line that doesn't follow the color sections. We often refer to that the treaties are where the lines were put on the land, like straight lines to identify what section of land was being surrendered. And you'll see on the black line is very wiggly, and it is generally they followed the waterways, and that so the kind of like what you call the conservation of the watershed is kind of where the areas that you can identify. And at the top point of the slide there, you can see it goes right up to all the way up toward so what is that, Ferguson, further north up there, and that is what is referred to in some of the land claim descriptions, land descriptions, as the height of land. And so that is the sort of the Grand River going all the way up, and the Credit is over further toward Toronto there, and that's the height of land where the water runs south and where the water runs west, and that's the Saugeen River. Yeah, that's where the dividing line is. So, and many of you might know that like the moraine, the Oak Ridges Moraine is up there where the water flows south. And so, and for the First Nations, they were usually always attuned to the physical things about the land, the water's edge, the height of land, you know, the trees, you know, those were dividing lines for who was using the land at the time, and sometimes even for war. Back in if you read up on our history, there was wars that went on between the Anishinaabe, and I should describe that word too. Anishinaabe is the overall umbrella word to describe our people, and there's the Ojibwe, and the Mississaugas are part of the Ojibwe, and there's the Potawatomi, the Odawas, are all part of that. So we have a circle, we're like called Great Lakes people. And that And there was other people around, the Haudenosaunee, who are like we were right next door to them. We're surrounded by the Six Nations, and on the south side by the Haldimand and Brant County are on the south side of us. So we're those areas there, the Haudenosaunee that's where you get the Iroquois. They don't like to be called Iroquois because it's a derogatory word. But that's where you get the Six Nations Confederacy, where you get the 5 different nations, but also where you get the neutrals. The neutrals, the Potawatomi, the neutrals, the Eries, the Petons. There's lots of other smaller Haudenosaunee groups that are either been taken up into the other groups or not. But their part is they came from the United States. If you just look at all what the Great Finger Lakes, all through New York, all the way up to Montreal, stuff like that. And this is Haudenosaunee, Iroquois. On the old maps, you'll see the word Iroquois. And for us, we're over on the other side, up all around the Great Lakes, into Michigan, up into Northern Ontario. So two groups of people adjacent geographically, but just want to stress, totally different. Our languages don't cross over, and most of our culture and traditions don't cross over either. We even dance a different direction on the dance floor. In the languages, the people think that we all speak the Indigenous language and it's just one. No, that's not the case. Like any other country and group of people with a language, just because you're next door doesn't mean that you all speak the same language. So just to help recognize when you meet people that that they may not know the language of the other group that that type of thing. So just to help you along with that. But that's a great map that gives you an indication of when our leadership talks about territory and treaty lands. So it helps you understand what that is. And when people hear about why we have land claims, it's because in that, after the BNA Act and stuff, if the system, the government of the day, didn't follow those rules that were laid out, that's where we get land claims that you hear today. And we, as the Mississaugas, have Treaty 22 and 23 being looked at again. It's right in that downtown part, down by toward the lake, lower part of the. I was looking for that map. I got that map, but I didn't put it in my slides. So next. Okay, so this is where we landed after moving out of the Toronto area. Our people had village sites all over, and you got to think that our people moved around a lot. They moved to where the resources were, and I don't like to be referred as nomadic. It's more that we used the resources in one place, then we migrated to another area, all in the same Southern Ontario, foot of Southern Ontario. And it's not like we didn't have a home because all of the land was our home. And so, but we were at the mouth of the Don. So that's where, when we moved to Port Credit, near the mouth of the Credit River, that's where the move was. And that was in the 1820s, 21, 22, somewhere around there, where they took up the development of Toronto. They moved things out of there. And that's where Saddington was too. And if those from Toronto, where the CN is held, and where that big wind turbine is, right below there's an old log cabin that's called Saddington Cabin. So it was moved from the mouth of the Don River as well. So all what's being developed there is being put on what was one of our villages. So as we moved to the Credit, the move to the Credit was government move, sponsored move. So a site was built. It was a planned community with a church and school and buildings. And in the history of that, it's all on the website, and we have booklets, and we go out and do presentations. We'll we used to always go to Mississauga for the little NHL, but we're not going to be there this year. We're going to Markham this year, but for several years we've always went to the city of Mississauga, and we set up our booth and share our information. And we go wherever anybody asks us to come. If we're able to, we go and share our information, tell our story, and help people understand who we are, where we are, and why we are. So today, at the mouth of that, right near the mouth of the Credit, is that village, is where our village was, underneath the Golf and Country Club. Where it sits, there's archaeological work, it's an archaeological site, and that's where our evidence is. And that we've done some different work with the Golf and Country Club, and that some things that we didn't really like the way that they did things, and that didn't acknowledge us. And so we did ask them to change something. If we jump forward one slide, go forward, and then I want you to go back. Go back, yeah. This is at the Golf and Country Club. This is their golf club, that cart that they drive around. See the picture on there? That was their logo for a long time. It showed up. We called it the Ugly Indian, and did not appreciate that they used that for a long time, like century, because it's an old club. And that we told them that we didn't appreciate that logo and that what it represented, because our people did not play golf. That's not one of our sports. But you see, to what it is today, you see that it has the recognizing the first, it's Mississauga, its Indigenous name. So that's the new what do you call it, logo that they have. But they're still running these logos on their carts. So, and they're changing some things on there, but that's like their history that they want to keep, disrespecting our history of that being our village site there. So go back. I just want to talk about the Golf and Country Club. So it's been built up, and that there's our bones are there. And if you didn't know, like the QEW, when you drive through the QEW and go over the Credit River, it's all under this new construction of doubling the bridge there. And that my role is duty to consult and accommodate. I was representing the First Nation at meetings and that kind of stuff. And we got called in by the archaeologist who was doing the dig and assessing what was in the ground there, getting ready for the highway expansion and work. So we're talking 2010, like, quite a while ago. And so we were called in because they dug up bones right there along the Credit River as it crosses over the bridge. And as they described that so the chief of the day, Brian LaForme, and I, and some historians all went down to the Credit River to see what they had retrieved out of the ground. And the archaeologists had already picked up the bones, put them in a plastic bag, and identified them to be sent off for further analysis. And so, see, as we would not have done that. We would not have disrespected those bones and picked them up and put them in a plastic bag and put a label on them. So in talking to them, the chief asked, so what are you gonna do now? And so what was in the bones that they had picked up at that point was a child's bones. So they figure, because it was a shoulder, like a scapula, was finger bones and a few other bones that were picked up and were collected. And the chief asked, well, what are you gonna do next? And the archaeologist's reply was, I don't know. He goes, every place I dig up your bones. And so in looking at the analysis of what happened, the QEW, where it sits today, is its third location over the years of development all around the Lake Ontario there. That it was like you say, our people were all around there, and that they would have lived, and we lived right there at the village site. And so as they kept growing, they moved because where you see, if you look at if you've been there and you went around the front laneway, Right there, there's a row of trees, and that's where an old map that people have found said that's where the roadway was. And so as it grew, they moved it. And so that roadway went right through our village and our burial sites and our school sites and our church site. It's a small area, but that's where all of our history was. And so they dug the stone up to make the second roadway. And so people traveled on that. And then when they made the QEW in the 60s, as we know it today, they again reused the stone, all good work, and made for the help make the base. And so how did our bones get out under the QEW is a good question. And so it's just the reuse of all of that, material. And our bones were part of it because in that original work, they dug up our grave sites. And so when I tell people that when I drive by there, when I drive into Toronto, and I do into Toronto often on the QEW there, I say hello to the ancestors and I apologize for what happened to them. And I say that we're working on so that doesn't happen again. So I'd like to share that story about the types of activity that drives people like me to have people understand who we are and the things that have happened to our people, and hope that kind of stuff doesn't happen again in the future. So the Golf and Country Club is right where that is, where's our original village site within the what's now the city of Mississauga. So next, and we can skip over the next one. I told you about that. And here is our existence there today. Thanks to the Heritage Mississauga and the city people that Jamie Gaspar and her team worked at. I call it the parquet outside the golf course fence. But they wouldn't let us go in, and even our archaeological sign is not there anymore because it was one of these nice brass plaques, and it just kept getting stolen, so they just took it down. So I don't even know where it is now. Some people may know, but I don't. And so this here right along to the golf course on Mississauga Road, you can drive up there, and there's a nice little I call it a parquet. I don't know, Jamie might call it something else, but it has plants in there, has our history, has our story, and it's fortunately it's still there. Been there for several years now. But we can always go visit. I was just up there when I was I drove up to go check it out, take a picture again, type thing. So next. So I want to talk about the importance of the Credit River in that this map, it's, I didn't have a better map to show you what we're doing. And I've been involved with this activity for 10 years or more. Maybe I didn't finish about when the city got its name. We were very much involved with the city officials of the day when it took our name. And I was there, and my daughter and other children from the community, they signed that original friendship agreement that the First Nation has with the city of Mississauga. And that's so we have it hanging in our offices here. And that we were part of that. And the mayor of the day was Mayor Speck. He come down to our event here at New Credit when they were doing the signing. He came here and landed in a helicopter. So it was quite the event. Everybody was all surprised and excited about what was happening with this helicopter arriving. So working with the municipality and the whole area of where the Credit River goes, we've been involved with the Credit Valley Conservation, and they have taken up the Indigenous involvement. I call it indigitizing the Credit River. So I've been on their committee for a long time, and we worked on a variety of different things to show the importance of the Credit River. Beyond what people use it for fishing and living by and all of that, because the Credit River is a very good fisheries. But we were told that we can't eat the fish out of there anymore, and that but people do go fish there, and it's one of the better rivers around, at least in this area. So you can see, if you look closely at it, there's some sites. So we've taken the different dotems that we have, or the clans, to start to mark different areas from the source of the credit up in Orangeville, and it's in the Conservation Authority's holdings. It's called Island Lake Conservation, and it's right on the sort of southeast side of Orangeville. And that there's a beautiful area there that the Credit Valley looks after. We have this site. This is the first one that's been completed, and you'll see in the video Credit Valley has produced a wonderful video about the site, and I'll tell you, it's very nice. It feels good. The moccasin identifier is going to be on plaques around there, and we're working with them to all of these sites. Will help create a trail for the moccasin identifier and teachings. And so, as a rule, we go in and we do presentations with them to help keep the information there. And we have a new person working there, an Indigenous person they've hired to help get the story out and produce more things. There's also a lodge at Terracotta is one of them. So more things are happening, but you see that we're on a path. Maybe it's going to take another 10 years to get another site done, but we've started. And so that's and that's what it's called, the Indigenous Experience Plan. And this first one, and that's what you're going to see in there. There's a couple of pictures here. It shows us, some of the construction that's up around there, and it's right on that man-made lake. And the source of the Credit River is just over on the outside of that property. I haven't found it yet, but my friend tells me that there's a plaque with a plaque says 1 on it, and so it's somewhere up just over on the side there. He couldn't find his picture either, so I would have put it in here to show where it is. And it's really the source of the rivers is just a little spot. So we'll go to the next one, and what you're going to see is a video, and that Anthony's going to help get that prompt up. And it's one of the first videos that were done to help engage and tell the story about the credit. So it's one of our elders, Gary Sue, who's been on our team, and that they'll talk about what that site is and some of the you'll see the pictures. They got some nice drone footage there. So Anthony, we can move forward on that.
In the beginning of time, the Anishinaabe lived around the Great Lakes, but they found confrontation and discord. And so a medicine group called the Wabano led them to the shores of the Great Salt Sea. And there they prayed for a long period of time. And finally, the Creator heard their pleas, and they called upon the 4 Mado, those ones who sit on the 4 corners of the earth and protect Mother Earth so that she can sustain us. And so when they prayed, the Creator then called the 4 Mado to solve their problem. And so the 4 Mado met, and the Mado first called upon the crane, the Busani, the echo maker. And the echo maker had the responsibility of looking after the wishes and the problems that the people brought forward to them. Next came the bear. And the bear was the protection, the army, and underneath of the army was the wolf, who were like the police force, and they kept discipline within the nation. Next came the turtle, and the turtle had the responsibility of giving hospitalization, healing, both physically and mentally. Next came the Martin. And the Martin was the caretaker of the life givers. So the life givers would say, well, you can't fish in that stream. We've overfished it, so we'll move to a different stream. And until that is replenishing its gain, we won't use it. And you can't hunt moose over there because we killed too many moose last year. And lastly came the fish. And the fish were our teachers. So they brought all of these totems together to make a nation that could be ruled and sustained constantly by the gifts that the Creator had given to us in the beginning, beside the Great Salt Sea.
It's a wonderful video that, you know, all the work that I've been involved with them and them taking up the cause of putting our Indigenous history there has been very rewarding for me. I've been to a lot of meetings and a lot of input and engaging with the community, and the First Nation has supported the work of the Credit Valley Conservation Indigenous Plan, and they were able to receive a good chunk of money to implement this site. So, like I said, it's just the start of the whole plan to come all the way down the river on the new activity, the new plan, and the new sections of land that they've purchased. So, you know, they're on a big fundraising drive themselves to get money to keep building the sites. So it's been very exciting work to see it completed. This is last fall before they got into the final stuff. So we had that ceremony. I just wanted to mention that we go there. We don't let everybody know that, you know, we're up there, but we go to the water's edge and we have ceremony. And that many of us go to the Credit River and we put tobacco down for the work that's been the spirits that still live at the Credit River. So I often stop and I'll put tobacco down in honor of the people whose bones are in the gravel in the sides of the road there. At any rate, so that's our, you know, being connected to our land. We have a video coming up. It's called APTN has done a story about Enchanted Islands. So in there we visit the Credit River and the drive around the Golf and Country Club there. And then we move on as part of our move from Toronto or the Credit River there to home here. We go right back to the Toronto Islands. So that's coming up soon on the APTN channel. We'll have to share that when I get the date of when it's going to be profiled. But I was in there, a couple of our youth and Gary was in there, that we went back to the area to do ceremony. So this is a great place to visit. If you like to go out, there's fishing walkways. They'll be doing maple syrup like, you know, everybody else. Next. This is Gary. And so just to let people know that Gary is one of our elders who goes out and does talks, and that he'll talk about the belts. And people, you know, sometimes we go to events and we're carrying the belts, or that our First Nations, any of our other First Nations relations, they'll be using belts to tell their story. And this particular belt, it talks about people's roles, a very important belt, the roles of the people they represent. And as you heard Gary say about who's in charge of the water, and that so he's on video now, I think. I'm not sure about this one, but he does do different videos. Another person named Brian Charles does wampum belt videos, and the other one is Dr. Alan Corbier. He is does excellent videos on what wampum bells mean, how they were used in history to make those agreements. They weren't written down on paper per se, and they were acknowledged in these bells. And those bells went to those meetings back in the day to get reaffirmed about what the relationship was supposed to be. Next. And our friends at Heritage Mississauga, we have a canoe there. And, you know, we're all about the water and all about the canoes. The water was our you know, was everything, because it was the roadway. It was our sustenance, you know, we're, you know, for just drinking water, and for the animals, the fish. You heard Gary mention the fish, and also in the video that we talk about the fish that were there. Our dotems are fish, and that they were an important part of our lifestyle in the day. And that's so going back to areas to fish in a canoe is great. And we can't see maybe up close, but if you go to the grounds there at Heritage, at the Grange, where they have the canoe, and we've got some other canoes in other places too, including here at our own laneway, where we paint the moccasin identifier on there to you know, lay claim. We claim. So that's one of our little initiatives of engaging, you know, as we move forward, where we can put canoes. We've worked with the David Suzuki Foundation, and they're agreeable to put the moccasin identifier stencil on any of the canoes that they're able to. So anyway, so thanks to Heritage Mississauga for keeping us always in the forefront. Next. And there with the city of Mississauga, I say, look at that, Indigenous designed fire truck. I said, we just don't stop. So I want to say thank you to the city of Mississauga for them to get our Indigenous artwork. Just a minute, Lauren, me, the water. So you see there's more things. That's at the fire hall. We had a nice ceremony there. And that on the side where you drive in to the parking lot there, there's they have the moccasins on the wall there. So it's all, we're starting to get our designs, our symbols in all different places. And so we always like to have good partners who are willing to put our sign down, and that we can work with different people to do that. So you can see this truck can, when it goes out on an emergency call or whatever, it maybe, I don't know, I'm sure that it's a regular truck, but anyways, they had a nice artist who put our story together there. And you know, the other thing, the water's in there, our people are there, and the fire. A fire is very important to us, and that we can have a fire alongside the water. So often when we have a meeting with especially the Credit Valley Conservation, we have a fire there that we can sit by. So next. So like I said, we just don't stop. The University of Toronto, Mississauga campus, right there at Dundas and Mississauga Road. It's a huge growing campus, and that we work with them on we're actually involved with them on a big program that it's called Community Engaged Learning. And people from our community go there and present about history. So we have a whole course that gets a credit for people who, students who join up with it. So the moccasin identifier, and you see a little bit of our logo down the right-hand side there, and you'll see the moccasin designs. To just talk about what that is that we go there and tell the story about whose land it is, because the moccasin identifier project, which I've been on since 2011, when it became the stenciling program, that it helps educate, and we target the school system, mostly targeting grades 1 to 8, but we're now expanding into secondary, and that we also go to organizations and corporate as well and do presentations. It's a nice, easy educational program that helps people understand whose land they're on. And that for us, this is land adjacent to the Credit River that carries our name, and it was very important in our history. And that's, so we have the students we have a whole program where we have 4 stencils, and the 4 stencils represent Ontario linguistically. The Cree in the north, the Anishinaabe, like us, as Mississaugas, as part of kind of all around Ontario. You get the Wendat from Collingwood across the northern parts of Toronto, Mississauga, Toronto area, all the way out to Quebec. Their main village now is in Wendake, Quebec. And then you get the Iroquois, Haudenosaunee in the south. And we use a Seneca moccasin in that educational program, as that group was the one that pushed into Southern Ontario in battle to try claim the land. And so that's why we use it as for the educational context. We have other ones of the Haudenosaunee moccasins, and we continue to get more designs. And that, but you need to know those designs were researched and drawn up by Philip Cote, an artist, an Indigenous artist who lives in Toronto, and that he did the research and come up with the concept of, if ever when I'm out in person, I do a pop quiz, and I say, ask, how many First Nations in Ontario? And I wait for the answer. And way too often, nobody knows how many First Nations there are in Ontario. And there's 133 First Nations, mostly in Northern Ontario. And that how many First Nations are there in Canada? And the answer is 660 around that area that are in Canada. So there's a lot of First Nations, and they hold land as an Indian reserve based on the Indian Act. And so you may meet with us in Southern Ontario, where the Six Nations is the largest, right adjacent to us. Six Nations of the Grand River is the largest populated reserve in Canada. We, as the Mississaugas, are sitting beside, located beside them in 1847. We moved back here because it was always kind of our land, and the Iroquois moved in from in the 1700s, late 1700s, into their place, and they got the 6 Mile Tract, which was based on their support of the British government in the war in the United States. And so they came across the border and took the track, what's called the track, often referred to as the track, and that where they have land. And there's other ones. The Oneidas are out by London. Tyendinaga is up by Belleville. Bala is up in, Wattamohawks are in Bala, and you get Akwesasne up in Cornwall. So there are all on the southern, kind of the foot of Southern Ontario. You'll see the Haudenosaunee communities. And that, so there's a lot of us around the area, even though this is now the big built up area, but we have deep roots in all of this land. So this is what we go out and do. We, even with a university or college levels, we go out and we do our teachings. And then as an interactive, we stencil the 4 different designs. And don't matter whether you're 2 years old or 25 years old. It's a lot of fun. You learn something. You get to take a stencil home and hang it on your wall and make it part of your understandings about the Indigenous people. And next time. This is that site. I'm not here to talk about the my moccasin identifier site, but I can tell you I live and breathe moccasin identifier. And the program is the initiatives that we call it now is growing. Here's my line. The moccasin identifier has grown exponentially. It's now out of control because we have so much demand, and it's dragging us down the road, kicking and screaming. So we'll be looking for people to ask us to come and present, and people will be willing to take up our moccasin identifier, and we can mark that land in a nice, friendly, understanding way. We're not threatening anybody. We're just trying to educate and make people aware about why, who we are. And I said, who we are, where we are, and why we are. And that's the website, moccasinidentifier.com. Next. And did you know that the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation owns a house in Mississauga on South Millway? That's been since the 1990s. and that a person there, it's called the Ida Armbruster Estate. She lived in that house. She came from Germany. I did some of the research on it as an employee of the First Nation. That she come to Canada, was a bookkeeper, administrative type person, worked at the Sick Kids Hospital. I only know all this because I helped clean out the house, and I know a lot of her history because I touched a lot of her papers and her personal belongings. She had that house there, and she was like a boarding house in a way. She helped people who needed help. Like if you had an accident and you needed to have some care for a couple of weeks to get yourself back on play operations, she took you in and looked after you, drove you to your appointments as needed, things like that. A very caring person and a conservationist. And she backed onto that gully, which is just where the Grange is there, and the Erindale School backs onto that. So right there is where that house and the Mrs. And there's a little another thing there. There's a pathway that right alongside of there that goes down into the area. So we've held that house in our name for all this time. So for me, I just go around when I got time and I'm coming back, and I go and run around there and take a picture of it, and that in a partnership with the city, the First Nation doesn't have to pay property tax on it. So it's a nice reconciliation and accommodation for as part of truth and reconciliation. So we're very appreciative of that and our recognition of our land. People, we rent it out for income is what happens there. So next. And here, this is basically my second to the last slide. And that, so this is on the upper parts of the Credit River, one of the tributaries out. And you see a group of us, can't maybe quite make out, but my son is on the right in the back. They're sitting there. They're in the water. And what they're doing is that finding of those drawings on the wall, they are carbon dating them. And that they're found and they're up around as you get up toward Guelph in that area there. And that most of the time people think that, the writings on the wall are somebody else's, or they're somewhere else and not in the southern part of Ontario. Lots up around Hiawatha, Aldervale, the Serpent Mounds, where you get in petroglyphs, and then other areas where there's drawings on the wall in what they call ochre paint. And that there's a person there holding a camera, and it's a very, very valuable piece of equipment that they use around the world to carbon date these drawings. And so that's what he's doing. Jonathan Ferrier, that's who's holding. He's a biologist, and he's holding the camera. And the woman, I think the woman beside him, she goes around the world with that camera to do that kind of work because they're specialists. She came to us that week, and she'd just come from Australia doing the same kind of work. So we're getting recording, and the results of that work shows that is original drawings of our people of the time. All of that research is being developed and written up, and that it really does. It's the start of resetting the story about the real history, and that our people were there. And you're meeting us today. We're still here, and the Credit River has become, has been, and probably always will be important to us, as it is to the people who now live there. Next. Chimigwich is a big thank you, and that's me getting my got my medals from the Governor General back in, that was November of 22. I think we went up there to get the medal, and so I was fortunate to be receive it from the first Indigenous Governor General, and that so as my appointment to the Order of Canada, I'm allowed to put CM at the end of my name. And that I just make a comment about the dress that I'm wearing was designed by Linda Lundstrom. The artist was she engaged an Indigenous artist out of Toronto who's actually from Northern Ontario, to do the design. So it's a specially designed dress for me, and that Linda Lundstrom, the fashion designer, she has a big fashion company in I think it's Toronto area anyway, and that she lives along the Credit River up there in Caledon. I'm going to say Caledon, but right there along she's right next to it. I went to her house for the fittings and stuff like that, and so proud to wear that dress whenever I get to wear it. So, miigwech, big thank you. I'm done.
Thank you for joining the conversation.
Hi, Carolyn. Okay, we're gonna ask some questions now.
Okay.
Okay, so I have answered some of the questions that I could already, but here is one that says, what is the difference between Mississauga Nishnabeg communities of the Williams Treaty, in brackets, Curve Lake, Scugog, Alderville, Hiawatha, and MCFN?
No, we're just in different places. We were all one before. No, they have, and the governments of today signed different treaties with them. See, the Williams Treaty is a recent one where they signed, and they you know, that was a dispute, and they won on that one. And that we never, as the Mississaugas of the Credit, because we were down here south of say Hamilton and stuff, that we never signed on that. We just weren't around there, and so we were never part of that Williams Treaty signage. So, but otherwise, those are all our Anishinaabe relations. And like, just to say that when we say Anishinaabe, that's the, you know, all of the different First Nations that are Ojibwe or Chippewa, Potawatomi, Odawas, were all the same. And if you didn't know, Chippewa is kind of the American reference for the Ojibwe. A lot of time most of the time you'll see Chippewa referred to in American language writing and stuff like that. But Ojibwe is the Great Lakes. Just think, you got to think our people were all around the Great Lakes. So we're very connected to all that land. And Lake Simcoe, we have the people, Rama, who's up there. Moose Deer Point is up around the east side. And then you get over into the Curve Lake, Silver Lake, all around where Curve Lake is. And then you get, the name is escaping me, up where Hiawatha and Alderville are, for the lakes, all very related, just with the settlement of the land and signing agreements to take the land. We get put in different places. We actually have a lot of family out in Kettle Point and Saugeen as well. There's family names out there. The King name, the Tobico name, you know, are all out, are there. And we have like relatives who are out there. They live in these other First Nations.
Okay, so the next question is, what is the Great Salt Sea?
You know what? That is the oceans. I made a note here. This is the first I've seen this video. So I made a note to ask about Gary talking about that. But that is in the, what I understand, that is in the early teachings of where our people came from. And there's a story about where we came from the East Coast, migrated into Ontario, and that settled here. So we were, that early history coming from the East, and be it the Atlantic Ocean and the salt water. So I'm going to get clarification on that too. Good question. I had that question too.
Okay, thanks. Okay, it says, miigwech for sharing. My heart aches when I hear about the bones. I was wondering about the story of the old totem pole that was along the Credit and where it went.
I don't know about that, but I know that the totem pole is not ours, and somebody just put it up there and symbolic to Indigenous people, just like in Toronto, in Norway Park, there, right on the water's edge, they have the big totem pole. But, you know, there's somebody of the day who decided that was, you know, an appropriate symbol to use. But really, the totem pole belongs in the West Coast. That's all their story. That's not our story. Just like the teepee belongs in the prairies in the central area. That's not our lodge. Ours is the wigwam and the curved housing. So
Okay. Can you please take a minute to describe who is in charge of the waters?
we all are. We all are. Water is life, and that it's our responsibility as people to be thankful that the water is still there and that we can still use it. In our teachings, there are water teachings, and that mainly it's the women who are in charge of the water, because we create the life that our babies are born in, that new life is made, and that it's important that the water that we have, that next life is in, that it's good, and that we're looking after all of that future as women who have the you know, honor to create the new life, and using the water that's in our part of our system to do that. So I always go back to that water is everybody's responsibility, and that women have a key role to play in that. And like our when we did the Credit Valley Experience Plan, the title of that is Water is Life. And I see that a lot of people take that up, and that, as I said earlier, that for the Indigenous people, all of us, water, the rivers and the water and the resources around it was really what's part of us.
Okay. How do you envision Anishinaabe sovereignty in regards of taking care of / governing the headwaters, including the Credit, Grand, Nottawasaga, and the Humber rivers?
Go back to that. What's the start of that question?
How do you envision Anishinaabe sovereignty?
Well, of course, I have my own ideas about what I think we should do, and that, and I'm all about visualization as the start of all of that, because you know there's been so much colonialism and the government systems of the day in North America. I have to say, all of North America, or any other British Commonwealth country that is, you know, getting over the colonial things that happened to our people. And that, so I worked with a lot of different groups and people to educate them about how our relationship to the land and why it's important. And that in our side, and I'll say, if the question is about sovereignty, then it's about what our belief is and how we would get to have the right to talk about what happens to the water. And the different circles that I run in, that people are asking that the water be recognized as the important thing, the environment, and especially the water be recognized by all people, and that the Indigenous people do get to have the, you know, say over what's happening with it. So I think that's a role we can play. We can't change the fact that this land is covered with all different people and all different groups, and lots of good people. Not everybody's bad. You know, sometimes we might get mad at the developers who all just want to make don't care about whether it's special plants or medicine sites or whether they're going to impact the water. But I think that relationship with Anishinaabe people or the Indigenous people to the land and to the water could play a key part in making for laying down the rules for sovereignty, and that we get to have a say about what's going to happen with those headwaters.
Miigwech. Okay, on to the next one.
Okay, I can go back to something there. I'll go
Okay.
back, and every source is going to have a moccasin identifier, right? That's what I'm saying, and they'll know whose land they're on. Going to change the world one moccasin at a time.
Right on.
Okay.
It says, Carolyn, still working with Toronto staff, the proposed First Nation park in my neighborhood. Are you aware of any progress at your end, re this park? Also, is the, is the new chief aware of the venue? And if not, anyway, I can come and speak to her. Got a great spot for the moccasin project. This is from Edith.
Okay. Well, Tamara, can you get me that picture? Yeah. Oh no, we still. I know there's some things that went wrong with a few things. Yeah, and that I mean process. We have to work with the city and all their rules and regulations. And that I still right in our office here. We're still carrying this picture of the Emery Park and the First Nations Park. And so a whole group of people worked with the different city people to create that. We have the turtle on there. We have the moccasin identifier. We have the trails. That's a model for what we can do in different parks. And so I work as much as I can with the different park developments. So still active on that. And the chief might say maybe still too new to do that. Definitely we can do some engagement as we move along. So hello, Edith.
Okay, so this is a comment from Tanya. I did my bachelor in biology at UTM, and I used to go down to the Credit River to do projects, like looking for mayflies and stoneflies under rocks. I think that's awesome.
Great. Yeah, well, there's just the waters, and the water's edge carries a lot of nature, and it's so just relating to that, and that there's and like I said, there's a bunch of us. I don't even know who all does it. I just know that in my circle that there are people who will go down, and we put tobacco down at the water's edge and ask for protection and give our good thoughts to the spirits, and that also, like I say, to the spirits that have passed away, or the spirits that are all around us in nature, and that we were actually, with all that construction at the Credit River, I was actually asked if we'd go in and do ceremony because they didn't feel that things were going right there. So we said we would. We didn't do a big official ceremony, but we did different ones up around with the Credit Valley Conservation, right at the waters, right at the river there. And sometimes we have our meetings, and it's really nice. We go get to sit outside beside the water, right in on the land when we do our some of our meetings, and that the waters all just hold such a special place. And so thank you for Tanya to going out and doing that, and checking out how the bugs are doing. It's great.
Okay, do you place moccasin identifier markers on private property?
Yes.
Okay.
You buy a kit, and then we have sort of like rules. It's the kit and the designs are what do you call it, patented or trademarked, and that people can go put them there, and they do during different be it June, Indigenous Day, or June, the month of June. We now have other times that people go out under the land and recognize well, we got Moccasin Day, and we have Cheney Wenjack Day, we have September 30th, we have Orange Shirt Day. That orange shirt is not us, but it's another symbol that recognizes what happened with the Indigenous people, and that people have bought the kit and stenciled, got a group together and stenciled on their sidewalk or on their own walkway and on their steps, and then sent us pictures. It's just great, and it's rewarding to see that people are taking it up and want other people help us get that recognition out there that about whose land they're on.
Okay, this one is from Morgan Dandy. I learn something new every time I have the chance to hear you speak. And Yawa for the endorsement from Mississauga's the Credit First Nation for the Urban National Park Initiative on the former Ontario Reformatory Guelph Correctional Center lands.
Great. Yeah, we're doing work with the, we've done work with the, I forgot to mention that on the moccasin identifier, but we have a, what we call an app that in partnering up with the National Urban Park and Development, and the moccasin identifier is there on the grounds there, and that they, in our partnership, we did a app. It's called an app, and that you won't be able to see it that well, but you see on there, I have a moccasin on my phone that you can use that app. You can color it up. I didn't do all the coloring. Tamara, our worker here, Tamara did all that. And she, wherever she goes, she puts the moccasin on a site. Like if she was at the Bandits game. Is that right? Or Rock? Toronto Rock. And so then she's sending out pictures on the Facebook or the connection there that she has the moccasins all over the ice there and stuff like that. And that, so there's lots of ways, creative ways using technology. And if you go on the website, you'll see that at the Mississauga, one of the big arenas, ice arenas, they have the moccasin permanently in the four corners of the ice. So it's happening all the time. And if the only thing it does is create a question about why is that? What is that? And what's it there for? Then that hopefully can start the conversation about why we're doing this and why there should be moccasins all over the place, and especially along the waterways, and that help because that's where our people are. I was going to use another slide. Back when they were building the sanitation services for the Toronto Islands, they did the construction, and so they stopped the water for where they put the pipe in, and they found prints in the lake bed, and they're deemed to be a group of people who walked along that part hundreds of years ago. And so that, and it was recorded in the one of the major newspapers, but I couldn't. It's very dark, and so I didn't use it. But anyway, our existence on the land is all over. So everybody, like the park that comes forward to talk about whose land they're on, is great. And the better part is saving the land and helping save the environment. So I was involved with them for many years in doing that. So Tanya, thank you for the question and continued support for your work.
Are there any petroglyphs on the Credit River?
Just the one we know is the ones that I showed you in that video, which were found. And so there's a couple more, but they're more over on the Grand River side. No, that's very, very exciting work. Oh my goodness. That, they were researched and brought back out and, use that camera to actually, you got to provide proof. And so this camera and that person can do that as they go around the different parts of the world and do that kind of work. Now there's I'm sure there might be more. We don't know that old history. Things changed along the waterway. If you didn't know it, when settlement came in and they put mills in place, it totally changed our life. Our people of the day were fishers, and that the mills stopped that way of life because it stopped the fish from going up the rivers. So our people had to do a very big cultural shift away from being, one with the fish. And that's so all that just, over the times, I always like to say we were there and we're still here. And as new line I see, we still rise. We're still here.
Okay, so is there any carbon dating available yet?
That is not out yet. You're seeing it, just a picture of us on the activity. Oh, by the way, I painted the moccasin identifier there too, all around on the stones. We just went around and used chalk spray and, we use a temporary paint like the, what the kids use and stuff like that. Because we go into the schools, it's all got to be non-toxic. And we like to say that it's going to wear away and you have to do it again next year. And so I'm sure there's going to be, as we keep on doing research, we'll find more. It's just people don't realize what they might be looking at. So we need people to tell us that they think they found something more along the Credit River.
Okay, this is from Richard. 2 years ago, archaeologists found evidence of a camp on the east side of the Credit, just south of the QEW, possibly 5,000 years old. Who was living in that area then?
Probably maybe like, could have been our people. A lot of times you get the Wendats, but mostly they're northern. They're like from Collingwood across the north part of north boundaries of Mississauga or Peel and Toronto. That there definitely were people there. And as we get further south into the water's edge there, it could be any one of our early people, including our people. And a lot of those sites, I read from the archaeology reports that they were we went into different sites. Like a site they might find evidence of the Haudenosaunee, the neutrals, different ones, early settlements along there. But yes, on the eastern, that's probably our site, because that's the site I said. It's on the east side of the Credit River, on the water's side, down toward the lake. It's not where we found the evidence there, but it's all along there. All of that area, they found lots of evidence of the Indigenous people. Now, like I said, it could be a combination over years, and I always like to say that there's layers. 10,000 years ago and 10,000 years deep in the land, that there's all different people lived here, along with all the animals and plants and people.
There's comments about people liking your dress, giving you lots of thank yous and chimigueches. Here's one that says, I believe Toronto Island was not officially ceded until 2010, when the Toronto Purchase was finally settled.
Yes. There was a lot of debate about the Toronto Island. I was the chief in 97 to 99, and that most of that time I spent on the research part, what they call the planning conference of land claim process in this country. And that the Toronto Islands, in researching that, the story is that it was connected to the mainland, and then a big storm come along and washed that connection away. No, in saying this is my personal opinion in the research and all the work that I've done in this area. I do not think our people would have ever given that up, because the Toronto Islands was a sacred space for our people. That's where we went to do healing, and the city still uses it the same way. They go over for that and get away from that big bustling city. You can go over there for quiet. You can look back at it. You can have a picnic there, be part of the water, as I call it. That's my movie, right? The Water's Edge, and that what you get from being at the water's edge, and that our people worked with the water's edge, and that island was a special place, medicine place, healing place. We know that we have records that our people were born on that island. It's in the actual archival records. We know that. And so they couldn't fight back enough to not give it up. And so in that 2010 Toronto Purchase, the Toronto Islands was officially ceded, even though like previously they said they were. And that's so I still like to claim it, and I still like the idea that we go back there and have picnics and we have walkways, and we're going to get moccasin identifiers on the redevelopment of the Toronto Islands that will have moccasins all around them. We've already went and painted several of them, and the Toronto Island people are our friends, and they take up our cause and put moccasin stencils down whenever they can, and whenever we can go with it. So we're there, and we just need everybody to come in, step in. Next one probably be in the springtime, where we'll go and paint, and we'll paint the island with stencils. Yeah.
The land doesn't forget about its people.
No.
This is Chief Miigwech for the wonderful presentation. May I ask, do you use Anishinaabe-Moan in your initiatives along the Credit River?
Yeah, we do. People who are language people, it will help us get signage up and do the ceremonies. when we go in and do special ceremonies along the water, we'll do it in the language. I'm not a speaker, so I always have to bring somebody with me who's a speaker. And we do language classes. Last night was Wednesday, and so today's Wednesday. Tonight is language class in the community. So we keep trying to bring back our language. And maybe people out there don't realize what like the Indigenous people have gone through and how much we've lost in our history. So now we're trying to regain that things that were lost or that our people give up because, you know, they had to do something to survive. My own father was a speaker in the Mohawk language. He spoke Mohawk, Cayuga, and understood Tuscarora as part of the Six Nations languages, but he never taught us. My mother, who's the Mississauga side of me, didn't speak the language, and so many of our people had lost the language, and so we're doing our best to get it back. And I encourage anybody who's out there who's you know, Indigenous and wants to learn the language. It's important to go back. So I keep going to class and I keep listening to tapes, and so I was at one of the little NHL, and there was Northern people there, and we were sitting in the benches there, and somebody behind us was talking Ojibwe or Anishinaabe, and I go, oh, I know what they're talking about. It was so neat to be able to understand them, because it's not in our households and not that, you know, much in the community. We're still overcoming hundreds of years of impact. So I encourage everybody to do as much as they can.
Somebody's reminding people to go to the Heritage Bites on Heritage Mississauga site, because there's previous talks on there with Carolyn. Are the Anishinaabe related to the Mi'kmaq of the East Coast?
Yes, indirectly, because they're from the same area. In the traditional story about our movement, yes, and also to the Shoshone all around, like the southern part of the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan. So you go into that deep history, there's lots of connections of our people, but you know, they're all different. Like, you know, they have it, and most of the time I remind people, because of the geography, our people have their culture and traditions and ways of life, as opposed to saying rituals that relate to the geography. You know, that you know, the East Coast, you know, and the mountains and the prairies. There's just so many different ways. The Mi'kmaq and all the water ways that they're part of that. So there's distance relations. I won't say that there's direct, but the language would be different. We wouldn't be the same language. And I want to just make a comment to Hashim about the Rotary. The Rotary has, in some early relationships with people, they have approached us to see if they could take up the moccasin identifier, and said with the Rotary Club that they have the capacity to put the moccasin across the province, across the country, and that we just weren't quite ready. We're not ready to go across the country yet, because, you know, all the work we did to get to where we are today is got to be done across the country. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and that but being that we've got, you know, 10, 12 years under our belt here, that maybe it won't be as long or as hard, and that yeah, the Rotary Club has been very supportive in doing adding us to the wonderful things that they do. So I mean, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
There's people are asking a lot of questions about other things other than the Credit River, so I'm just going to bypass those questions. But one is, where were the petroglyphs found along the Credit River? Was this also in Orangeville?
No. So guess what? It's a secret.
Oh, okay.
No, it's up around out of Guelph, and there's a park up there called, oh, I was walking around there, hung out there for a whole week, painted stencils all over the place. Hardwood? It's up there around Guelph, on the east side of Guelph there, and it's a conservation area, park and stuff like that. And so you can only see it from the water. You got to be out in the water to see it. We just happened to be like climb out there on the rocks, and I was able to take those pictures. And that's so we're still working with that whole find to get it down. And so it's been close to maybe almost 5 years now since finding it, getting the resources to go out there in a boat, getting the experts to look at it, and actually doing it. So we had ceremony there almost every morning and every night that we were there, making sure we respected the water and the land properly. No, it's up there, but like I said, you got to be in the water to see it. So people who get out in the water would be able to see it. It's on a tributary off the credit there.
Okay, so this is one that says, Carolyn, how do you sustain your resiliency?
I don't know. I just like doing stuff. You know, my business is JDI Business Services, and people say, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, it means just do it." And they go, "Isn't that the Nike slogan?" And I says, "No, I call it's just did it." So people laugh and say, there's just so much to do, you know, and I like the grassroots work about changing the world, you know, and that you know, I was elected chief, which is an amazing opportunity, but I didn't like the politics, and I found the role rather what do we call it, restrictive, and so at the time, like Phil Fontaine was the Grand Chief of the day, and he says, "Carolyn, I hear you're not running," and I said, "No, I'm not," and he says, "Carolyn, we need good people like you out there," and I says, "I know you do," and I said, "I want to be one of those good people, but I don't think that I have to be chief to do it," and I want to change the world and how we relate with it, the people and the land. And I said, so that's what I want to do. And so Phil and I are still friends, and we work on things together when we can. And that there's just a need, and that I want to be able to do it for my grandkids and great grandson now, got a great grandson, and that they don't have to have gone through what we've gone through. So for me, as a grassroots worker, there's so much to do. That's what keeps me going. And I love talking. So it just, if people who know me, I'm a talker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we only have 2 minutes left. And the last question is going to be, how do you feel about the usage of the Anishinaabe name, Mississippi? Say the Credit River, Auntie.
No, Missanini?
Missanini Zibi along the Credit River. Like with it, what would the process be in order to change or enhance the use of our language for the Credit River?
No, well, we're doing a lot of work in the city of Mississauga at the southern part of the river is doing amazing work. We wouldn't get what we got today if it wasn't for them being open-minded and willing to do this and engaging with people to, introduce us and have us do things. And that they carry the name Mississauga, and then the credit carries their name, and that I could envision that we have, like with the Credit Valley's Indigenous Experience Plan, that we could have it all the way up the river. All the way up the river. We have our symbols, we have our lodges, and we have our language. We could go tomorrow if we wanted and go to the lodge and have a gathering. And we can go up to the crane site. It's, I think it's officially open now. Might not be, might be still some construction to go. But we can go sit there, and they'll be putting the signage up, and we've been asking for that to be in the language. And I didn't put in the sign that, but the Credit Valley Conservation, as in all of their main entry points into the Credit River, all the way up to Orangeville, they had put the moccasin identifier down. I got a picture of me and the president when they unveiled it. So we're getting permanent markers. not our, our stencils that's going to wash away. But I get just activity, the activities that we're doing with people, and engaging them. Like I said, it's a fun little educational program that people can take up without, we're not hitting anybody on the head with a hammer to say, you got to know this, you got to do this. We can engage with them in fun stuff. And doing the camps that we've done with people coming in from different cultures and different languages, you don't have to speak the language to know what this is about. That's what we found. The kids who, kids have stenciled and colored on the ground in the summer camps, and they don't speak English. And so it's diverse, and it can reach all elements. And I'd say elements, but different language. If that's considered to be a barrier, it really isn't. The symbols help do that.
Okay, I just want to say Chi-miigwech for Carolyn and listening to her talk today, and to Heritage Mississauga. If you want further information and to look at past webinars and more information, go to Heritage Mississauga website. They got tons of information there. Chi-miigwech, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you for joining the conversation today. We would like to thank Carolyn King for this engaging presentation, sharing her knowledge and informing us about the importance of the Credit River. Thank you to our sponsors, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the Rotary Club of Mississauga, for their generous support to bring Indigenous conversations to a wider community through this webinar series. Thank you also to Rotary President Hashim Takvi for joining us today. Join us again with Carolyn King on March 27th to learn about friendship treaties. Register today on Eventbrite. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us to stay up to date on upcoming programs and webinars from Heritage Mississauga as we continue to celebrate Mississauga's heritage through research, promotion, and learning.